Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. We are joined today by Rose Simard. Excited to have her here as the founder of CAIM Coaching. Yep, that's right. She's from Calgary, Alberta, and she's teaching so much, and empowering her clients to negotiate in their divorce. First and foremost, welcome to the show today. How are you, Rose?
I'm very good, Jill. Thank you for having me. I'm
Well,
excited.
thanks for being here. Now, your company, what is your company called?
It's pronounced
CAIM?
CAIM,
Oh,
like
CAIM. I'm sorry.
CAIM. That's
Perfect.
okay. That's okay. It actually means sanctuary in Gaelic.
Ooh, and how do you spell that? So
hmm
if someone wants to find you on the website, could you share?
Yeah, so it's spelled CAIM. Coaching.com is my website. But yeah, it actually means sanctuary. It's a pagan ritual where people actually draw an invisible circle around themselves by hand to form a protection to basically set them up in a really dark time.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
So my main focus, I am a trained divorce mediator and a certified divorce financial analyst. And I used to work mostly with clients through mediation, but now I'm more and more doing one-on-one coaching because I'm finding a lot of people don't understand the mediation process. They don't understand or they don't think their spouse will participate fairly. So I'm out to educate more people and help people individually, whether they're working with a lawyer or not, to first save them on legal fees, and second, to make sure they get through this not more broken than when they started.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And if you go on the website, I know you say you're divorced with benefits, spend less, share more, start fresh. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
services that you provide and how you help people, which we'll dive into momentarily. But first,
Yeah.
I think it's important to get to know you. Would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself? I was reading, you grew up, you were the youngest, what, five girls?
5 girls,
Wow.
yes.
So you were an independent little girl, right? So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I lost my dad when I was actually 6 years old, and my mom remarried when I was 8. So you can imagine what that would be like, 5 girls being raised by a stepfather, right?
Wow.
That,
Yeah.
that brought a whole different dynamic into that. But yeah, very independent because my mom didn't have the easiest of upbringings, and unfortunately, she got into two different relationships, one being with my dad and one being with my stepfather that weren't truly healthy. There was many levels of abuse through both those relationships. And when I was 15 years old, I actually challenged her. We had this big argument and I couldn't understand why she wouldn't leave. And she kind of shrugged her shoulders with a lot of defeat and said, I can't afford to leave. And that's when I swore I would never let my financial circumstances leave me stuck in a relationship or a marriage.
God bless. I have a very similar experience. My parents were married, well, it would have been 40 years. And that was the problem. They never got along. It was really horrible. And I was the youngest of
Mhm.
three, and that was it. My mom's like, I don't have a job. I never had a career. I can't leave. And I saw her trapped. And it also
Mhm.
affected me. Hence, I'm 46, single with two kids, and I have a hard time with relationships. But I always said I have to be independent. I have to be financially okay, and I'm instilling this in my boys, but
Mhm.
I totally understand where you are coming from.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of people out there, who may have experienced this, similar situations and going through. So you're not alone, which is something I know you're very big on letting
Mhm.
people know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this awareness, you said it impacted you. Could you share how now what happened? Tell us, as a teenager. So obviously this was going on in the home. What ended up happening?
So my mom did leave my stepfather, but not until I was actually married. So that was like 10 years later. So it took a long time for her to do that. And one of the reasons she did leave is actually I became a financial advisor at a university. So I actually have always been an investor since I was 18 years old. I read a book that was really monumental in terms of changing my life. And then when I actually got my designation and became a financial advisor, my mom asked, can you look over my money? Can you just sort of give me some direction? She'd had a widow's pension. She'd had a military pension because my father was in the army, and she had a pension from being a nurse for 20 plus years. And she actually didn't understand how pensions worked, that she would have that money forever. So when I told her that, because they had really never managed their money well, with her and my stepfather, they really didn't have a lot to their name. But she had her pension, and those were guaranteed. And when she understood that she would actually have that money coming in for the rest of her life, that's when she actually made the decision to leave. And so one of the reasons I actually got into financial advising was to educate people about money, and just understanding that whole process. And that was all thanks to that book I read when I was 18 years old. And it's called The Wealthy Barber, authored by David Chilton. He is a Canadian financial advisor. And it was a really eye-opening book in terms of understanding how anybody from any different circumstances can actually build wealth. And the key is about starting early and knowing where you want to go or where you want to end up.
Wow. Okay, so
Mhm.
now here you are in college, right? So you
Yep.
already had this background in finance and you're working on it. Then did you go right into this career of coaching, or were you in
No,
another field
I
first?
actually worked on the financial advising side, and the year I got married, well, I'm going to date myself. That was 1995, so almost 30 years ago.
Wow.
And I actually became a financial advisor, but my husband was actually having trouble at the time finding work in his field. So we actually relocated from British Columbia to Alberta,
Okay.
for his work. And I just decided I didn't have it in me to actually start being a financial advisor again. So here I was in my mid 20s trying to get people who already had money in trust in me, right? Because now you're dealing with people that are generally older. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually ended up switching out to the lender side, and I became a mortgage broker and had my
Oh,
own
wow.
a mortgage broker business for I was in the industry for 16 years, and I had my own brokerage with staff for over 12 years.
Wow, what a
Yeah.
career. What a history here. My
Yeah.
goodness.
Always been on the financial side. And
Mm-hmm.
then, life happens. I actually got a head injury in 2012.
Ah,
And that really rocked my world and changed what I thought was like important to me. And I was losing my passion in terms of being a mortgage broker. The industry had changed since the early 2000s. I was like, I don't know, I was looking for something new. And then 4 years into looking for something, I had thought about going back to get my accounting designation, getting my certified financial analyst, maybe even going back as a financial advisor. I was really exploring the financial side. And then I actually had a friend who reached out to me and thought I would be really good helping people manage their finances through divorce. And I didn't even know about this industry because I'm not divorced myself. So I didn't even know this existed. And I was actually intrigued because I've always been called to serve and help people, whether they had money or not. But I believe everybody can actually improve their circumstances with the right support.
beautiful. Well, thank you for
Mhm.
sharing this and your background. And I know you mentioned this is no drama divorce, right? Talk about
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a few. I really like the marketing, the play on words, but yeah, I have three things that I really try to keep in mind is that divorce is an emotional process, and there's no doubt that it is. However, a lot of people will get caught up with the emotion and they'll let that rule the divorce. That'll help them influence on how they're going to go through divorce. And so I often tell people, if you can think of this more as a business transaction, I know that sounds cold, but it will actually help save your sanity and your bank book, right? Your bank account balance in the end. And so I kind of call it the no drama divorce. That's really what it is. And I came up with that because I heard this term that everything comes down to two things, either numbers or drama. And when I heard that, I'm like, that's exactly what divorce comes down to is,
Mm-hmm.
and because it's so much financial aspects, it's either going to come down to the drama that plays out, or it's going to come down to you think it as a business transaction and following the numbers.
All right. Well, let's talk about the art of divorce as
Yeah.
well. And you mentioned divorce with dignity. And then we're going to get into some misconceptions about divorce
Yeah.
overall.
Awesome. Awesome. So my No Drama Divorce is actually an online membership, and it's really intended for people to get the facts, understand what the basics are, and be able to, do it themselves, but at least get educated before they fully jump in, whether with hiring a lawyer or however they're going to negotiate their divorce. So it's really about disseminating all the information that's required so they learn what it takes. So it's just a monthly membership. No, people can cancel anytime, but it's really the education proponent of my offerings. The Art of Divorce is my one-to-one program, and it's basically designed for people who can't get their spouse to participate, or don't want to have their spouse participate, and they just want some individual coaching. So it's kind of, I would say, half personal development and half financial planning coaching. Because what I realize is mindset is so important when people go through this. And if they're looking for revenge or payback, or, they're being driven by guilt, or they're being driven because, they don't feel like they've been dealt with fairly or treated fairly in their relationship, that can cloud their perspective, right? So I really do believe that if people can have the right mindset, they can look at this through a personal growth experience, they can really come through it and so much better. So that is what I focus on in the Art of Divorce. So it's a one-to-one program where I help people over a few months, and make sure that they get through it in the best possible way. And I like to tell people, you're just making the best of a very, very difficult situation. There is honestly no financial upside to divorce. And there's very
Mhm.
little, emotional upside, in the sense if you're going to keep living in the past. However, my clients that I work with, they're much happier at the end of this process than they ever imagined they could be.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. Well, it's really great to hear. Let's remind everyone how we can contact you. Would you mind sharing the website, phone number, if any social media pages as well before we
Oh,
continue?
yeah. So my website is www.caimcoaching.com, and it's spelled CAIM coaching.com. People can reach out to me on my phone number at 403-975-5530. And in 2023, last year, I actually started a free Facebook group called
Ah,
Divorce by Design, Empowered Endings. So if you're on Facebook and you're interested in some free resources, some free perspective, come join the group. I have almost 1,200 people in the group now. So
wow.
it is growing, and that's actually my passion.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, let's continue the conversation here today
Yeah.
and discuss more about misconceptions
Yeah.
about divorce.
There's a lot of them.
Okay.
There's a lot of them, and we can spend a few minutes here for sure. Well, if you can imagine, we've all heard the horror stories. We've
Yeah.
seen movies like War of the
Yeah.
Roses. I'm dating myself.
Yeah, I remember that
Kramer,
one.
yeah, Kramer versus Kramer, like in the mid to
Oh
late
gosh,
70s,
yep.
early 80s. And then most recently, there was that movie, The Marriage Story, with Adam Driver and what's her name? Johansson, Scarlett Johansson. And so that movie I think it came out about 4 or 5 years ago, and it portrayed the story of a couple going through a divorce. And there were so many things that actually kind of drove me crazy when I was watching this movie. That there were so many non-truths, but you know what? Drama,
Mm-hmm.
the truth isn't always as exciting as the drama, right? As the
Yeah.
story there. So, what I understand in most people is that they feel like it's safe. They're safe. They're going to be protected when they hire a lawyer, right? And they feel like they're going to get what they deserve. But what they feel like they deserve and what the law says about things are very different. And sadly, there is no emotional justice when it
Okay.
comes to divorce. In Canada and the United States, we've had no fault law since the late 60s and early 70s. So, which is crazy because that Kramer versus Kramer movie back past no fault laws, they were just out about slandering each other, but it was really about a custody case about their son,
Mm-hmm.
right? Getting through that. So again, divorce doesn't have to be a battle. It doesn't have to be an all-out war. It can actually be civil. I'll go as far to say it's not always amicable, but it can be civil and it can be respectful, right? It can be dignified. And what a lot of people don't understand when it comes to divorce is they can't just hand things over to anybody, just to a lawyer, right? Their participation is actually needed.
Yep.
And really understand what the divorce process, and I'll tell more people in the next podcast, but there's 4 stages to divorce that people need to know about. The first one is planning. Okay, what do you want your divorce to look like? What are your issues? What are your priorities, right? Next is dealing with the finances.
Okay.
What does your financial picture look like? And, what do you want it to look like when you come out? And what do you maybe need to shore up or improve, right?
Yep.
Then you go into negotiation, right? And then the last part is documentation. And those are actually the typical steps of any type of negotiation. And divorce is actually a negotiation. It is the ultimate negotiation, not one that people choose to go in it, but it is, right? There's always going to be some give and take no matter what. And so really, there's only two parts of a divorce that you could technically outsource. And
Okay.
one is the negotiation if you want somebody to represent you. No one can plan it for you. No one can access your
Mm-hmm.
financial information or understand what the consequences are to your life like you can. And then the second part is documentation. What lawyers do is write up what the agreements are. So if you skip the planning phase and you don't understand your finances quite clearly before you negotiate or think that you're going to actually ink a separation agreement, it is going to be really hard. Your divorce is going to be extra long, extra
Okay.
difficult, and it's going to prevent you from moving on, right? So
Yeah.
really things to declare. And you know what? I'm not about saying that you don't need a lawyer. Okay. This is not the whole intent. I
Yeah.
just want people to know that they don't need a lawyer right away. Okay. They shouldn't be the first call. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to just hire a lawyer until they're actually ready to have the lawyer do the parts that they're going to help them. Otherwise, it's going to
More
extend
money.
more
More.
money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, it might not be a popular opinion, but there's a reason why divorce lawyers actually don't have a good reputation. Because a lot of times the only person that profits is the lawyer. And no matter what the outcome is, whatever a couple ends up agreeing to, lawyers get paid.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily in the business to actually promote resolution. They actually thrive and they profit on conflict, on encouraging like the miscommunication, right? And isolating people from, oh, don't talk to your spouse. No, nobody else can help you but me. But that makes them kind of actually, I'll call that abuse in a certain sense. And unfortunately, especially women who have come out of a very controlling, you know, either emotionally abusive relationship or, you know, physical abuse or, you know, just had, you know, not been able to stand their ground. Unfortunately, the statistics show that they're more likely to get into that second, another relationship in that, right? They keep repeating things. It's the same thing with lawyers. If you have been in an abusive relationship, you're likely just going to enter into an abusive relationship with your lawyer, which is
Ah,
really harsh and hard for people to hear because I know what they don't want to hear. But lawyers are not trained to help you be emotional support. They're not trained in finances. They're
yep.
not trained to help you stand up for yourself, give you the skill set to, you know, be confident, be able to communicate and advocate for yourself. They're there to actually take over the divorce for you, right?
Yeah.
Again, that's not an
Got it.
empowered process, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, at all, right? So yeah, it's hard. It's hard because a lot of people think that they need a lawyer to protect themselves, but what they need is actually someone who's behind them that's going to give them the skills and the
Yeah.
confidence.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. And
Mhm.
just to remind everyone who we're talking to, Rose Samar, don't forget, go to
Yeah.
CAIMCOACHING.com. That's the website. And again, divorce with benefits, spend less, share more, start fresh. And
Mhm.
I notice that you also have a Facebook group. Could you share just a little bit about that?
I do. I started that last year with the intent of reaching more people. You know, in some areas, some industries, COVID was a good thing. COVID was not a bad thing. But I realized when COVID hit, I could expand my market. I could expand letting people know instead of just in my local community. And I just thought, what is the better way? Most people are on Facebook. How can I provide some education and some reference for people going through it? And it's called Divorce by Design,
Mm-hmm.
empowered endings. And it's really meant for people who are not seeking out revenge or like payback,
Good.
but
Yep.
really want to divorce with integrity, with their dignity intact, and just know that they've actually dealt with themselves in a fair way and got a fair divorce in the end, right? Again, empowering them to play a pivotal role and taking control and stepping up in their situation.
Beautifully said. All right. What else do you want to share with us today? We still have 7 minutes
Few
left.
minutes?
Just making
Okay.
sure we got time. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. You know, I talked a little bit about misconceptions earlier, and a lot of people might be wondering, how is it even possible to get divorced without a lawyer? And so would love to share that. And you know what? You 100% can. Not everybody does, and it's not necessarily suitable for
Hmm.
everybody. But if that's something you want, you can. Okay. And the reason you can is that our laws in the US and in Canada, and actually in quite a few places around the world, there is no rule that says you have to hire a lawyer to get divorced. And the reason is because the laws are actually in place to fix that imbalance power. So
Yeah.
if there's a money differential or money power difference, or someone's more of an accomplished negotiator, the laws actually provide standards and guidelines that can be followed by anybody, whether you have a law degree or not, right? So if you know what your rights are and you understand what your responsibilities are, you can actually negotiate a divorce no matter what your spouse is like, okay? In 3 weeks or the next podcast that I talk, or the last podcast that I have, I want to talk about high conflict divorce because there's a lot of misconceptions there. So I won't dig into there, but the laws, what I really want to stress is that they're actually very formulatic. There is a standard and there's a process that everybody can follow, and it's meant to actually reduce conflict, okay? Because they understand that emotions run high. So they're standardizing, there's specific descriptions on how property should be shared,
Hmm.
and that might be different from state to state, or province to province, but essentially the same thing. I actually like to compare it to filing income taxes.
Oh,
So when you're looking at income taxes, there's provincial or state laws or income tax, and there's federal income tax, right?
okay.
The process is virtually the same for anyone. Whether you're filing personally, it's going to be the same process. If you're an incorporated company, you're going to file in a specific way, right? But the nuances is based on where you live, but it doesn't change how you have to process your income taxes. And that's the exact same way with divorce. And next time I'll talk in more detail what that process looks like, but they're very clear. It's there to manage expectations and just understand that you don't actually have to follow the letter of the law, right? You
Yeah.
need to know what your rights and responsibilities are. But I like to tell people, if you can't come to an agreement on yourself, the law is your fallback. It's not your first stop.
Got it. Exactly. And there's hope for people out there who feel there is no hope, right? That's always another thing.
Yes.
I can only
Yeah.
imagine how scary this must be to go through this. And you're not alone. So many people have,
Mhm.
right? What do you tell your clients?
You know what? When a lot of people say like I'm really scared, uncertainty is basically what causes the havoc. No one ever imagines, like I've never met anybody who hasn't contemplated divorce for years, right? It's not an
Hmm.
easy decision to make. And there's a lot of uncertainty that either holds people back, right? And a lot of people are scared what to do it. So I just, try to tell them that, it's best to make an informed decision, right?
Yep.
Understand what your options are. And that's really all anybody can do. No one has a crystal ball. No one knows exactly, what their life is going to look like, but they can have a pretty good idea if they have the right information and the right support.
Got it. Well,
Mhm.
thank you for that. My goodness. And let's remind everyone, now, if we do reach out to you, do you offer like an initial discovery call for someone?
I
How does
do.
that part work? Okay.
I do, and I do work with couples as well. I'm doing less and less, but I am working. A free consultation will last anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, depending what we talk about. And I'm really not a pushy salesperson. Like I'll tell people, I don't expect a decision at all today. If you want to explore what is working with me, I just want to make sure that you know which direction you should go or what your next best step is. And if I'm a part of that, we'll talk about what that looks like. But otherwise, please take me up on having a conversation. It will be a lot of help. And I have so many people that all they needed was just one conversation, a little bit of guidance, a little bit of direction, and they are able to manage things from there on, right? Not everybody needs a full-blown divorce coach. Not everybody needs sometimes their finances are, not as complex and they need that. So yeah, everybody has something different that they need. And, whether it be me, I really encourage people to look out for certified divorce coaches.
Yeah.
Reach out to certified divorce financial analysts in your area if you don't want to work with somebody online, right? There's many, many resources that a lot of people aren't aware of outside of hiring a lawyer.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for reminding us of this. And again, to reach out, please
Mhm.
go to the website. And also, again, you offer three different types of programs, right? When
Yes,
we talked about the no drama divorce, the art divorce, divorce with dignity. And
yes.
again, there's some with individuals, with the spouse, without the spouse, with the couples, but there's something for everyone. And I'm glad we talked
Hmm.
about some misconceptions today. I know we're going
Yeah.
to dive in next time to the divorce process itself, and then even
Sure.
further down the line, how to deal with high conflict or narcissistic spouses.
Yes.
So, all right. So, how did you want to leave off for your listeners today?
Uh, I just want to encourage people that if you don't know or you don't feel like you have options, maybe because your spouse won't work with you or you don't even know where to start, I want to tell you there's always a way.
Yeah,
Everything is possible. Might it be easy? No. And it might not even be simple. However, there is always a way. So if you can keep being open to opportunities, you'll find something, right? Instead of thinking of handing everything over to have someone else take care of it. If you can actively participate and use this as a growing experience, I promise you, you'll actually come through this so much better than you ever imagined. And no matter what your circumstances are, a fair settlement is available for everybody. Okay. All it takes is the right support, the right mindset, and planning. And then you can basically forge your own path with a lot of pride and a lot more poise than most people and come out confident, empowered, and in control of your life and finances.
got it. Well, thank you again for being here. One more time, tell us how we can reach you.
At my website at CAIMCOACHING.com, so CAIMcoaching.com, or my phone number 403-975-5530. You can always text or call me there, and or visit me on my Facebook group, Divorce by Design Empowered Endings. Love to have people come in who want support and guidance.
Thank you so much. You have a fantastic day. Thank you. To all of
Awesome.
our listeners, please stay tuned. More of the shows coming up.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.